Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Stephanie Gillard, the CEO and producing artistic director at American Stage, and really looking forward to this afternoon's performance, Women of First. And first, just a little bit of context for this conversation. American Stage just launched its Reimagine season this week with a commissioned piece there by Rachel Lynette entitled Letters to Kamala. It's part of our digital theater series that will continue through the remainder of 2020. And we wanted to kick off the season with a production that spoke to this moment in our nation's history. And briefly, just to share that as I was looking at putting together a digital theater series, it was an opportunity for us to have new works created specifically for this medium and for this moment. And I was so fortunate to have a conversation with Rachel Lynette, who we had collaborated with at American Stage in the past, to ask her what she thought would be a meaningful story to tell at this moment. And we had that conversation just days after Kamala Harris had been nominated had been selected as the vice presidential nominee for the Democratic Party. And right away, Rachel had a thought, an idea about how to speak to this moment by really acknowledging and bringing forward the legacy and history of voices of women of color who have been a part of American political life for the last 100 plus years, but whose stories may not be quite as well known, to really put into our dialogue the idea of legacy and of our own history, and to bring these women's stories to light, as well as to engage in a dialogue about what the future looks like, both for our country, as well as for women in leadership and women of color in American political life. So I was thrilled when Dr. Kanika Tomlin, St. Pete's deputy mayor and city administrator, agreed to join us in a conversation after she herself had a chance to see the production and really give us the opportunity to have a dialogue about what these themes mean to us right here in our own community. And so I'm going to get out of the way because I'm really excited to introduce two really incredible women. One of them just came out of performance moments ago, and she's going to talk a little bit about her experience with working on Letters to Kamala, and she's going to facilitate the conversation with Dr. Kanika Tomlin. So please join me in welcoming Renata Eastlick and Dr. Kanika Tomlin. Thank you, ladies, both so much. And I'm going to make myself disappear in a moment. I just want to let our audiences know, whether you're watching live on YouTube or via Zoom, to please feel free to send any questions our way. We'll save a little bit of time at the end. But I know these ladies have lots to talk about before we get to that moment. So take it away, ladies. Thank you so much.
Hello.
Hi, Renata. I've been waiting days to do this. I stand up, but I think I'd fall out of the frame.
Oh, you're fine.
This is my standing ovation for a beautiful performance.
Thank you so much. It is an honor to be able to get to know you virtually a little bit during this time. I'll start by talking a little bit about the show. If you've seen it or are about to see it, I play Charlene Mitchell. And this beautifully written play by Rachel Lynette is called Letters to Kamala, and it's about Charlotte Abbas, Charlene Mitchell, and Patsy Mink, who really are some women of first that a lot of people may not remember. And I'll be the first to admit and be humble enough to say that I didn't really know a lot about all of these women. So it was really great to gain a new perspective of all these pioneer women that really were the first ones to do all these incredible things. And I don't want to spoiler alert too much for those that haven't seen the show, but I think it's a very powerful piece that it has been uniquely written to empower women. And I am really interested to hear what you have to say. And so as we know, you saw, I heard you were able to see the show, yes?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
I enjoyed it immensely.
Good, good. In Letters to Kamala, right, there's Charlotta, Charlene, Patsy, and they talk about being these first pioneering women, you know, throughout their life and their careers. And before we even get into that, I just want to know what stood out to you, you know, as a woman of first yourself, like what stood out to you and what resonated to you from the performance itself. I'm curious about that.
I get a little emotional just remembering it because it was so powerful an experience on two levels. The stories of the women being portrayed, which, you know, I'm in that same boat. I knew about Patsy Mink because of her work with Title IX. I didn't know a depth of information about the other women. And their stories are so impressive, and the dynamism with which their stories were told. It was just so special. You know, that authentic journey, that there's a way to be supportive of, you know, women of color who are experiencing first in a very authentic way that isn't just reduced to surface effusive praise.
Ooh, girl.
A true understanding of the journey, and to see that done so respectfully was really, it was a moving, cathartic experience for me. And I'm very grateful for the excellence with which you and your fellow cast delivered your craft. It's very special. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That's really moving. And I'm glad, because isn't that what theater is about? You know, it's, we do this, right? And we do this not just for the love of theater, but because we want to tell stories that are relevant and relatable and human. And really, it's about, this particular piece is about the human experience and how these women were really pioneering visionaries, right?
Yes.
As a fellow visionary yourself, girl, what is your perspective about the idea of being a woman of first? Like, what does it mean to you to be the first African-American female deputy mayor and city administrator? And is there a sense of responsibility that comes with that?
There's so much responsibility that comes with that. You know, it's an interesting consideration because it's more complex than it's usually treated. It's, you know, it's something that's referenced in an introduction, or a sharing of a resume. But when I really take the time to reflect about it, it's so heavy because I find it simultaneously an indicator of how far we've come and a huge, huge signal of how far we have to go. You know, the fact that in this time, we are still even experiencing women, people of color, women of color, as being the first to hold a role. I find the thought breathtaking because, you know, it's not as if in the last 50 years, people who are in that demographic just became brilliant or ready.
Right, exactly.
It's just that the world is in a place where they are ready to receive us as such.
Yes.
And so, you know, it's a great honor, but it's also a reminder of how much work we still have to do. And I think so much of the responsibility is in exactly as Rachel told the story. It's to acknowledge all that happened prior. You know, I think of like when we talk about people who are recognized as first, it's often like looking at the top branch and bloom of a tree. You know, trees don't grow from the top down.
Yes, girl.
They grow from the bottom up. And the only way that beautiful blossom that we are loving came to be is that deep root structure that, you know, had to endure so much challenge to get there. And so I think the responsibility is in all ways looking back, acknowledging, you know, if you are a person who sits in a seat of first, there are so many people who open doors before you to make that possible.
Thank you. And piggybacking on that, like that's the beauty as well about the play itself. You know, it talks about your ancestors and what people had to go through to get where they are now. You know, so it's a journey, right? Life, first of all, life in general is a journey, but remembering that there were people before us that pioneered. I mean, what if there wasn't a Rosa Parks? Hello, right?
That's
So
right.
there's always got to be that first person to really open up the door. Now,
Yes.
I feel like it's our purpose in life to continue that, right? And that's how we empower the people around us. Now, my question to you, the next question is, how familiar were you with the stories? I think you mentioned Patsy Mink, but how familiar were you with Charlotta Bass and Charlene Mitchell prior to the performance? And why do you think more people aren't aware of these like trailblazing women and in politics, American politics in particular?
I did mention I was peripherally familiar with Patsy Mink, but I don't have a breadth and depth of knowledge about any of these women, and that's a shame.
Yeah.
You know, these women were thought leaders. They're courageous and bold, important parts. Their stories were so critical to our history. But we know that, you know, history is told through the eyes of the victor. So much of what we know, you know, even about our own journeys, is a reflection of who and what we value in our society. And so I think it just points to the criticality of targeted celebrations, targeted observances that really underscore the telling of untold histories. You know, that's why we have Black History Month and Women's History Month and Hispanic Heritage Month, because we have to know about these people who had these visions and had these thoughts and took these courageous steps to understand what's even possible and what's ahead. I went to a historically Black college and university, Florida A&M University.
Okay.
After growing up in a pretty completely white environment most of my life, and it was an awakening to come into this environment where you know, Black achievement and excellence was not treated as an exception. It was the norm, it was the expectation. The stories of great pioneers were told as regularly as the stories of founding fathers. And it really changed my perspective and expectation about the importance of my history and the role that that history plays in our stories overall. And it's something that I wish more of our young people and all of us at every stage in the continuum of life had access to. It's something that we've worked very hard to do in my time in City Hall, to tell those stories, honor our history. We wrote it right into our vision when we came here in 2014, that we will honor our past as we pursue our future. And we mean that to be the past of everyone who calls this place home.
Yeah, wow. And what do you think we can do as a society so that these stories don't get forgotten? Like, what's your, I mean, it might be a deep question there, but, you know, I'm just curious, like, what your thoughts are on that. Like, what do you think we can do to keep, you know, it almost reminds me of that old, like, you're sitting with your grandmother out on the porch and she's like, let me tell you the story, girl. You know, so what are your perspectives on that?
That's exactly right. I don't think we can leave history to be written by some faraway person who's been designated the one who's going to tell the story. I think we have to all share our histories, share our stories, chronicle them. Access and exposure are everything. And I think getting to know people and just sharing experiences will open up the way that we remember what is unfolding every day.
Yeah, that's deep. That is deep. Now, in the play, again, in Letters to Kamala, there's a strong message about legacy, right? And honoring your legacy of those who broke barriers before us as we move on. We sort of already touched that a little bit, but what does that mean to you, that honoring of legacy?
That's one of the heaviest pieces of being a first, because you have to really dig deep and understand that you're recognized as the first, but you aren't.
Yeah.
No, so it's having a depth of understanding of how you come to this place in this time. You know, I think about in my job now, so I'm the first African-American female deputy mayor and city administrator of St. Pete. My children are the 6th generation of my family to live in St. Pete. And so my great-great-grandmother came here looking for opportunity, a place where she could make a better life for her family and show them what was possible. And she, at formal education, she barely had any. She didn't know what she was walking into. And I can't imagine that she would have fathomed that actually 2 of her grandchildren have served in senior capacities for the city. That legacy is what brings me to this place. You know, when I was growing up, Don McCrae, who was a Black man, so strong and resolute in his character, integrity, with the way he did his work. He was the first Black city manager of St. Pete.
Wow.
Before we even had a strong mayor form of government, which means, you know, he ran the city in its entirety. And I was a small child, and I had the benefit of knowing him and seeing how he did his work. And one thing that I remember very deeply and very strongly is that there was no sense of imposter syndrome with Mr. McCrae. He understood that he had done his work, he had prepared, he'd earned his place in this city's history, and was unapologetic with his authority. And that's informed me so much on so many levels, in so many ways. And it's a part of the legacy and the way that I try to lead. So I think it's honoring all those people who came before, whether they are exactly who you are or doing exactly what you do, you know, whether they are first who are trailblazers like the 3 women in the play, or they are, you know, my ancestors I don't know to name, because they lost their names somewhere in the Middle Passage. But they had a story, they had a hope, they had a dream, and the entirety of that which I am is just an amalgamation and a combination of all of those hopes, dreams, stories. And I think just living in the truth of that is honoring legacy.
Right. That's beautiful. Thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing that. I really appreciate that. And it's very moving to hear you talk about your family and just, you know, family's everything to me. So I think it's so important to honor our ancestors and pass on that legacy, you know, and know that you can be a light. You can move things forward and be that train that is imparting something positive to the world, you know?
And we get so caught up in senior or, you know, terminal sentinel positions when we recognize achievement and first. But we know, I mean, we come from a culture so rich and robust, and people who never held a title or never ran an office or a business,
right?
But were transformative in the gifts that they bore.
Right.
And, you know, those are, I think, really, that's the undercarriage of the courage and the strength that even allows us to have aspiration. Understanding of sitting in a seat like the one that I'm fortunate to have.
Yeah, because it's innate, right? It's innate. It doesn't matter how educated you are. If you are born a leader, you are a leader, and you can pass that along to someone else, you know, because a leader is someone that imparts truth, imparts justice, imparts love upon others, you know, so it doesn't necessarily have to be this through the seat. You know, you could be a mom, a teacher, race management, doesn't matter. You can always impart a legacy upon those that are around you. So thank you for sharing that. Do you have any, like, who was a big influence in your life choices? Like, who did you look for inspiration?
We talked about family a lot, and my whole identity begins and ends with my family. I have a huge family.
Yeah, me too.
My mom is one of 15 in a blended family.
What?
I grew up with aunts and uncles and hundreds of cousins.
I love that.
And a grandmother who was slight in stature, but filled every room. Much elegance and grace. And she was certainly an inspiration and an example for me. And all of those aunts and uncles and people who laid hands on me. My father was a huge inspiration. And guide for me, kind of like that spirit guide in the shepherding of my soul journey through this walk. I remember he was still in school when I was a little girl, maybe 4 or 5, and he would take me to the library with him when he would do his homework. And he'd do his homework, and it was a college library, so they didn't have books really for me to read. So he would grab something off the shelf for me and tell me, when you get to a word you don't understand, don't skip it, let's talk about it.
That's awesome.
And that little lesson, and there were millions of those, in summary, in sum, created in me such a curiosity for learning and a respect for knowledge and an understanding that the learning process is not something by which I need to be intimidated, that you can figure it out. And it's just constant all the time. And then professionally, I've been blessed with so much inspiration. It's amazing. Sometimes I think that there's divine intervention and guidance that comes to life path. So I've been delivered into the hands and the care and the guidance of some female leaders who are so fierce and so strong. I worked at the Times, my earliest career days, and there were some leaders there. I'll call them by name because they matter that much. Mary Jane Park and Cinda Mort, who just poured into me.
Yeah.
Just set a course for greatness, seeing it in me long before I could see it for myself. And then I worked at Bayfront, and I know I'm being long-winded, but this is—
Oh, you're fine.
Because I'm so glad to be able to express gratitude.
Yeah.
For what these people have done for me and their leadership. Bayfront was led by a female CEO at a time where women weren't really leading health systems. Her name was Brody, and she was the president of the hospital for 25 years. And she was unflinching and uncompromising in her excellence and in her recognition that the role of women executives unfolds differently than that of men.
Yes.
And she created childcare on site, and she created sick childcare on site. And she never blinked twice. If your child had a play or a game and you needed to go, she was all about it. And that instilled in me such an understanding and respect for not ever compromising my authenticity and who I am. And it's taught me so much about how to lead my team. I'm just so grateful to her and the many gifts that she helped me to prepare to lead a city. It's wonderful, the inspiration that I've been blessed with in my life.
I love that so much. I do, because, people, I don't know, I think sometimes we can forget the people that have influenced us, just like some of these women have been forgotten to history. And I really admire that you remember that person, right? That lovely lady imparted something in your life that was so powerful that you remember that, and you're carrying her legacy forward, and that is helping you lead your team and just really motivate people to be the best that they can be, because really that's what life should be about, right? It's about community and how we can help each other. And I think at a moment where our country is so divided, if we could only see past that and see past the things that we are afraid of, the things that we fear and that are different, and say, you know what, this may be different, I may be fearful, but let me open my heart and see if I can allow myself to change. And I think if we allow that, if we allow ourselves to become vulnerable, if we allow ourselves to say, okay, this is scary, or I may not understand this person's experience, but I can learn from it, I think we really can change a lot of things and really be the first to start a new revolution in the world, and particularly in the United States. Now, in the play, again, the women talk specifically about obstacles and challenges that they face specifically as women of color. Would you be able, can you talk to me about some of the hurdles that, if you're willing, that you had overcome, and what has surprised you on your journey of facing and overcoming these obstacles?
No, it was one of the most powerful and I think transformative aspects of the play is the fact that so many of the experiences the women were articulating still unfold today. Even with all that we've been able to accomplish and achieve, even with so many people coming into awakening and understanding that the way women of color have been perceived for so long was so short of their true possibilities and potential. Those limitations are still assigned on a daily basis. I mean, the biggest hurdle I face, and I face it pretty continuously, is people's surprise of my capacity and my humanity, aspiration, and my preparation. This construct of treating Black excellence when it's encountered as an exception is simultaneously insulting and defeating. Yeah. Because for obvious reasons, it's just laid against a backdrop, a very painful backdrop of presupposition that is erroneous, never true, is systemically perpetuated. Yes. And creates this false psyche about what it means to be a person of color for people who are not people of color, and also for us as we understand how to come into our own in a world that doesn't fully see us. And so, you know, it's coming into every situation where the starting point, people aren't seeing you where you are, is my most significant hurdle. And it's very wearying. And I just try to move through it in a way. I've grown and I've learned, I've become wiser. It's not about me. That is not about me individually, but my role in it collectively is to help people grow in their understanding, where we are truly living in a world someday where our children are regarded truly for who they are and what they are bringing to the situation. Yes. You know, there's nothing worse than being invited into the situation or an opportunity, but being done so as an exception, an opportunity that would never be extended to other people who are just like you. Yeah. Because there's no exception to my journey. It's a reflection of a lot of opportunity, a lot of sponsorship from people who were able to see me, and preparation on my part. But opportunity, access, and exposure given to any of us in this human condition will allow for that same growth, that same achievement, that same fulfillment of our potential. Yeah. Wow. I love this conversation so much. and again, I keep thanking you for this because I really appreciate that you are willing to just be so open about everything, you know? So about your specific leadership role, there is a performative nature, you know, to being in your role. You have to represent a city, right? Yes. Communicate a clear story, give speeches, and inspire others, like we were talking about previously. So how do you prepare for those moments? Because, you know, actors prepare lines and all these things, but so how does one in your position prepare for those moments? It takes deep preparation for me. Personally, right. I am an introvert. I am painfully shy. It takes everything I have every time, whether it's one person or 1,000, to open up. And I think it's so important to bring authenticity and true energy into every exchange and to honor the time that's being shared, you know, a moment that's being created. Yeah. And so it takes all of my energy, all of my focus, and it's, you know, it's a little bit torturous, but I am super mindful. Like I say to myself all the time, who am I to not feel up to the task of walking in this moment and sharing this story and stewarding this city through this very special chapter. It's so much bigger than me. It's not for me to be tired. It's not for me to feel intimidated. It's not for me to shy away from this opportunity. I feel like it is just for me as an instrument to fully embrace this time and create a culture that is as inclusive and focused on equity as is possible. So when I don't sit in this seat, it becomes pervasive and it is just the St. Pete way.
Right.
So it takes deep work, but I have to be up for it because how precious is this moment?
Yeah.
It's just so, it's so divine.
Yeah. I see a lot of light in you, you know, and I'm just meeting you virtually for the first time. But you know, sometimes in life, a lot of women or women of color have become silenced, or their voices become silent. What would you advise, or what would you say to these women that are struggling to have their voices be heard in civic leadership?
This one is really, really tough. I think it's so important to find like-minded, like-spirited people,
Yeah.
whether they share your exact journey or not, but to find your tribe and walk like boldly and fiercely in it. And in that, encourage each other in the moments that encouragement will be needed, because they will be needed.
Yeah.
You know, we are still blazing so many trails, and, you know, when you walk through fire, your hem is going to get singed. Got to get good with that. You have to build up enough resilience to be able to stay the course, even when the reward is not immediately obvious. And you begin to see that these seeds that you plant bloom in places we may never even witness, but we put it out there. It's like a bird who ate from one tree and planted a seed, fertilized the earth hundreds of miles away.
Yeah.
And I think when you have that tribe and you have that energy and you're connecting, it's okay if every day doesn't yield awesomeness or success or great profound insight, because what it is doing, it is building a collective energy, a collective muscle of understanding and acceptance and empowerment, and it becomes a culture. We've seen it happen right here in City Hall.
Right.
And it started with Mayor Rick Kreisman's perspective and how he was going to build his team and come through this time of shared service to the city. So he invited me as deputy mayor to have a citywide purview, which was different. Previously, there was a Black deputy mayor before. He was the deputy mayor of Midtown, which translates to a liaison with the African-American community. This mayor had a vision of elevating a person of African-American descent into a level of leadership that transcended all boundaries of the community. And it's a tone of expectation. And he specifically looked for a woman very intentionally because he thought it would carry a message. And what we've done is we've created a great culture. In the time since we've been here, our CFO is a woman, our director of budget, city attorney is a woman, our director of education, our director of urban affairs. I mean, I could go on and on. 20 women who sit boldly and firmly in their positions. And there is no regard, only respect for the fact that we are women, many of us women of color, and we are charting the course for this city's next chapter. It's just awesome to be a part of. That's our tribe. We've built a tribe, and it's inclusive. It's supplemental, it's additive. It's not exclusive to the establishment that has been here for more than 100 years. It is expanding, broadening, making us a better city, a better place.
Yes, and I love that, because like I was speaking about earlier, you know, it's about community, you know, and I love it. I love, yes, I love all the, that you're positive and that you're a trailblazer and that you're forward thinking, you know, because that is important. We need that. We need that in America right now. We need, because there's so much pain and loss and hurt that's happening right now, you know. So I think that it's also important to have that trailblazing spirit, that I will not give up. I will partner with my team. I will find the people around me that support my cause and will push me forward and push each other forward so that we can make a change, not only at the citywide level, but nationwide level. So I think that that's really powerful that you have found a team of people that are for you, you know, for you and
Yes.
for each other, because if people aren't for you, I mean, it's gonna be hard. It's already hard, right? It's already
right.
difficult and challenging to lead, you know, and at your level as well, you know. So imagine like if you didn't have those people by your side, you know. So I think that that's really, really beautiful. Now, what would you say, in what ways does civic leadership provide opportunities for positive cultural change in our local communities?
I think we've talked so much about it already. I think it's getting involved, not waiting to read the story, understand that we are all authors writing the story. It's in our hands. And regardless of the role we play in a community, we all are just so equally important and equally valuable to our city's brightest future.
Yes.
And I really just think honoring the humanity of this time and the divinity in each person gets us to where we need to be, creates such a strong social fabric and such a strong social capital that when we find ourselves in trying times like the one we're in right now, you still feel a pervasive sense of optimism. It's not an ignoring of the challenges, but it's an understanding that however we come through this, we will come through it together.
Yes.
You know, the road to resilience is paved with disruption. I say it all the time. On that, we can count.
Yes.
The uncontemplated elements of my work day to day exponentially outnumber those I plan to take on. And the only way we get through something like that is to prepare ourselves for what's possible and to keep our eye on that goal in a way that just will not be deterred. I mean, it's exactly what you were saying previously. And it's putting together that army of people who are just unwilling to let it go.
Yes. Yes.
And that's, I just identified so much with the three women in the play. Those women and those people are all around us.
Yeah.
And they shape the course of our city, our nation, our world. So let's elevate those with whom we identify and make way for all the good, because there's room and abundance enough for all of it. There just is.
And finding the hope, right? All of these women, even through their struggle in this play, were hopeful and kept fighting. They didn't stop. They didn't allow the obstacles that came before them to just say, oh, well, whatever, I'm just going to quit. But they kept fighting, you know? And I think we all need to fight for the things that we believe in and keep, you know, yes, it is difficult at times to feel hopeful. It is. However, the fight has to continue. We have to keep pushing to reach that goal, to see the change, you know? So I really, really admire that. Now, what do you, what role do you think the arts can play in community engagement around politics specifically?
Oh, arts, I mean, what a beautiful case study answer to that question. This play, you know, we're all connected by the arts in a universal way that I believe defies articulation.
Yes.
I purport to be able to explain what happens in someone's soul when it connects with art in a way that helps them understand who they are and why they're here. And that is what I think on every level, just that creative divinity that shines through in the experience of art, whether you are the creator or you are the receiver. And do so much to help us understand the convergence of where we meet, the places that we all come together and understand some things just are.
Yeah.
I don't have the words to explain it. I just know it. And I feel it. And we are made better by it.
Yeah.
I'm a better, more whole person after having experienced that play. Far more so than I would be by just my own independent research, in a very different way even than if I had the pleasure and huge privilege of having the chance to even talk to each of those women individually. There's something about the expression of art and a person giving and opening themselves and sharing their soul with your soul that just cannot be substituted. I think it has a very sacred place in our community and is one of the most integral elements to any place being in the fullness of its potential.
Yeah, because it's really about the expression of human experience.
Yes.
And that is something that we can all relate to, whether you agree with it or not. There's always a way to see the human experience in the arts, you know, and that expression. Now, I have one last and final question, because it's been an absolute honor to speak with you, Dr. Tomlin. You are really a powerful, special lady. And I am thankful to be able to have had this very intimate conversation with you. Now, my final question to you would be, what advice would you give to a young person or the young people who are looking to be a change maker, an influencer, a mover, a shaker in their community?
I think I tell them to do it every day, do it in ways big and small, and always understand why. And make sure that that why is rooted in the human experience, because that's why it matters. And to just stay focused, you know, all the things that we've talked about up to this point, just understand the value of that aspiration and why it's been placed on your spirit, why it exists in your heart, and honor it. And you know, you can't seek to achieve recognition as a change maker. You can only make change. And then whatever recognition, if it comes, it will come. But the motivation needs to be the people for whom it makes a difference. And you need to understand the importance of that difference as though you were the one who needed it to be made.
Ooh.
And then it will happen.
I love that so much. I love that so much, because it's true. It all stems from here, the heart.
Yes.
All stems from the heart. And I think it's, if you allow it, it can happen. And it's the old saying, dreams can come true, et cetera, et cetera. Knowledge is power. And I think that's a beautiful, beautiful way to end our conversation. And thank you so much for taking the time and just out of your busy schedule, because I know you're busy, girl, but to have this really meaningful and powerful conversation with us. And I think Steph has some words she'd like to say as well, but thank you.
This was, I hated to even pop in because I just have been enjoying, as I know those who are watching in different forums, the two of you be really open, and thank you so much. There are some questions that have come in, and I'd love to take just a few more minutes. Dr. Tomlin and Renata, if you'd stick around too. And also just lots of great, I'll share just some of them if we've got time, some of the great comments. But people are absolutely leaning in. I just want you to know, Dr. Tomlin, that when you said that you were being long-winded, somebody immediately said, not long-winded at all. So I thought you should know that we're all really taking a lot in and learning a lot, and really appreciating that, how much you're giving us a chance to get to know you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So one of the questions that has come in is, as the first African-American woman in the highest level of leadership in the city of St. Pete, what are your plans to preserve your legacy educating African-American girls in the city of your existence?
This is something I think about all the time. I lay awake at night thinking about this because I think it's so important. You know, it's one of the reasons I came into this role, was the opportunity to give back in a way the city has given so much to me. So we've created some programs to be formal about that, to try to hardwire the role that mentoring and connection and empowerment plays in our city for all young people, but especially for young African-American women and young African-American men. We're very proud of that work. It's created transformational change, and it's called My Brothers and Sisters Keeper. It's an extension of President Obama's program, led by our Director of Urban Affairs, Nikki Capehart, and Director of Education, Leah McRae, uplifts that. And the difference it makes in the lives of our young people, I think, is immeasurable and will be exponential. And I think it will shift the trajectory of St. Petersburg's next chapter.
Yeah, wow. And I'd love to actually offline talk with you more about that, because that sounds like something that more organizations within the community can find ways to support and be a part of in a meaningful way. One of the things that I think is really special about St. Pete is how much openness there is to partnering and to being, you know, really connecting together to be stronger. But it feels like this is a moment where there's a kind of exponential step forward that we can make on that front. Yeah. And I think that, you know, a couple of these questions came from an individual who really, I think, really wants you specifically, wants young African-American girls to know about Dr. Kanika Tomlin, because you represent what's possible for a lot of young girls who may not have thought or pictured themselves in that place. So I just wonder if you have any stories or any thoughts around what that's like to be in that position, and how you are making that meaningful for you and for the young girls who are finding out about you.
You know, it's an interesting question, because I think it assumes a level of self-awareness maybe I don't sit in fully as it relates to people's connection to what's possible by seeing me. You know, maybe because I'm living my life, I don't have an understanding of what that might be, but I understand it in the way that I have watched people from afar and found great inspiration and connection. And so I'm actually inspired by the question to contemplate that and make sure that I am accessible and recognizing that there may be connection that could be quite meaningful for young women growing up in St. Pete, just the access to me, because it would be something that I would love. It's just not something that, you know, that I find of immediate value, but as I think about it, I think that's awesome.
That's what the comment that's immediately coming in, that, you know, with respect to your modesty, that people need to know who Dr. Kanika Tomlin is. And and I appreciate, because you were vulnerable enough to share that you're an introvert, and it's a lot to just put yourself out there in the way that you do. And you talked a little bit earlier about responsibility and the weight of that. But I think that the message that's coming through is that there's so much that we can all learn as a community from you and women like you, but specifically within the position of power that you're in. And I think that I'm trying to not just give my own thoughts on this, but make sure I'm representing what's in this chat box here, which is just a lot of positive gratitude to you. And I think you answered the question about as mayor, why the mayor selected you to be his co-leader and co-visionary for the city of St. Petersburg. And just the statement that under your and his leadership, the face of St. Pete has changed forever for the good. Thank you, is the comment.
Thank you.
I wonder if I could ask, and this is coming, and somebody else in here says introverts unite. And someone else in here mentions C. Betty Winbush as
Yes.
A woman whose name is known and serves as another great kind of legacy example for us all. I'd like to ask you if you have any thoughts about how fellow women, how I'll just ask it really directly. How can white women be partners, strong partners and allies to women of color, particularly in the realm of leadership?
That's a very deep question. My friends and I talk about it all the time. We have a personal board of directors, and they've each asked me that. I think it is just honor the authenticity of a relationship. You know, nothing transcends exposure and access, and almost all of the negative limitations that Black women, Black people of color in this country face are born of fear and ignorance, a lack of access and exposure. So you cannot answer that question from the periphery. It can't be solved from the sideline. You can't read a book about how to be anti-racist. You can't attend a Zoom. You gotta really connect, get to know people, understand their journey, and connection erases all of the erroneous information that leads us to the type of conclusions that cause people harm. And it amplifies all of the things that connect us as people and makes it very easy to be an ally because it's the right thing to do because you love a person and you know them. So I'd say get to know people honestly, authentically, and champion them. I think Stephanie might be frozen.
Oh no.
Am I?
No, you're here. You're here.
To say, because I didn't get a chance to say before, thank you to you.
Oh.
This was such a special time for me. It was such a pleasure to see you perform. And I just feel so honored to have shared this time with you.
Yeah, likewise. I love women empowering other women, you know, and I think that these conversations are needed. It's important to have them so that we can be once again reminded, particularly as Black women and women of color, that we can, right? We can do this.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry, my connection went up, of course, just at the moment when I was hanging on your word to respond to my question. So sorry about that.
You're fine.
In the last couple of minutes here, there was one other question. This will be the last one that we take from the chat room that I thought was a really great one for thinking about how community comes together to make a difference. And there's someone who wrote the question of being new, as someone who's new to St. Pete, how can I do something really to make a real difference?
One of the most special things about our community, I think, you know, we're a small southern kind of coastal town, but we have such an inclusive spirit. It's the kind of place that you can come and immediately find your way into tables of decision-making and making a difference. I mean, at the municipal level, we have mayoral appointments for all of the work that we do, that citizen-based work. And we made it a point to make sure that we are as inclusive as possible. We try not to just appoint those we know. We invite people, whoever is interested, let us know. And we feel best when we appoint a person we've never heard of. That means we're getting it right. We've tried to be very intentional about democratizing our processes and creating an egalitarian approach. I think you'll find that right now, it's a special time in St. Pete. That's not unique to the city with the capital C. That's indicative of our city overall. Almost any organization, I wouldn't say almost, every organization that I know would welcome your volunteerism, would welcome your thoughts. There are so many ways to give back. And, I think your giving needs to be tied, obviously, to your passion. So I would love to have that conversation with you specifically about some of the options that exist. Feel free to reach out to me in my office and we can talk about it. But a simple Google search for your passions in our city and connecting with the organizations that are stewarding those interests will lead you to so many opportunities to get involved. We have an open door community and we welcome everybody's commitment.
And you've been a huge part of that, of making it truly feel like an open door community. And our city is so fortunate to have you, and I can't wait to see where we go next with that sense of really of coming together and the open door. And Renata, I just have to say, thank you for bringing voice to Charlene Mitchell and doing it with such respect and being such a really, as I knew you would be, authentic part of this conversation. I've so enjoyed and learned so much from both of you today. I also want to give a shout out to Dee Selmore, who plays Charlotta Bass, and to Maya Tagana, who I think may be out there with us today, who plays Patsy Mink and bringing these women to life. And of course, the words of Rachel Lynette and the direction of Dawn Monique Williams. If you haven't yet seen Letters to Kamala, please join us for that conversation, for that experience to really learn. It will surprise you and I think create a greater sense of respect for legacy as well as for the hope and potential for the future. And I want to oh great, she's back. A couple of things that you said today that really stuck with me, and I want to just make sure that we kind of leave with that together. Is you said we are all authors, which is such a powerful way of reminding ourselves, reminding us all that we get to continue to write the story. The story is continuing to unfold, and the more we own that authorship that we have, I think the better we will be as a community. And you also talked about the idea of inclusivity as additive. Thank you. I'm going to keep remembering to use that as a way of reminding people that this is something that continues as we continue to find ways to open more doors, that we are growing in our richness as a community and as a culture. And finally, just that recognition and remembering to look back and appreciate the roots of where we've come from, so that we can really honor that and grow from what we've learned. I learned so much from both of you today, and Dr. Tomlin, again, I want to thank you for your leadership. Thank you for opening up and letting us in on a little bit more about what makes you what has brought you to this point in your life, and your inspiration for going forward and leading us. So I'm looking forward to seeing what's next. And thank you again, ladies, so very much. And what a great conversation. It was a
blessing.
It was a really a gift. Thank you so much.
Thank
you. Meeting you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.